is me with a perm. I don't have that perm anymore. Sorry for that, but the rest is still original. And I've been working on a few titles. I mention these titles all the time. I always try to brag about it as much as I can that I worked on Dark Souls, because I played Dark Souls before it was cool, when it was still called Demon's Souls. And Elden Ring, The Witcher, Cyberpunk, Tekken, so a whole few titles you might know about. Not only AAA premium titles, also free-to-play titles. So I'm an expert in pretty much all kind of business models. There is no big business model out there that I have not been working with so far. And I've been working with a whole bunch of partners as well. Names you probably also know about. It's a little small maybe, but it says something like Ubisoft, Bandai Namco, Deck 13, Voodoo on the hyper-casual game side, and so on. So a few partners. I'm trying to look for more partners in the Philippines. I already have some. Want to work more with people from the universities as well. I would be really happy to support the students and the professors there with their curricula, sharing knowledge, having knowledge transfer between the West and the Philippines as much as I can. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about the content today. I want to talk about the games I love. Maybe you also want to talk about the games you love. These are the ones I love. Not I love more games than these, but these were especially my favorite games when I was a child, a teenager, in my younger years. How about you guys? What are your favorite games? Go. Undertale. Ah, I love that answer. Ah, really? Ah, fine taste there. Piece of art, in my opinion. What about you? Suikoden 2. Classic. Oh, did you play the original? Amazing. Oh, I get goosebumps here. What about you, Jen?
Euro Truck Simulator.
Yeah, that's a good game. Yeah. Yeah. These are the games I still love up to this day, right? And when I was, I think, what was that? 21 or something, 22. I joined a games company at that time. I'm from a small town in Germany, in the north of Germany, and I was never given that perspective that I could ever work in games, the thing I love, especially since Germany is not really known for great games or anything. So, but I had that opportunity after college to join a games company, and I was allowed to work on these kind of games. Games I worked on: Goodgame Empire for Kingdoms, Goodgame Big Farm. The company was called Goodgame because they made good games. Everyone knows about them, right? I mean, everyone played Empire, right? Everyone played Big Farm, right? You know these games, right? 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 No, I didn't know these either. Nobody knows these games. Nobody knows these. But I was still happy. Better working for a games company rather than a law firm. I used to be also like a lawyer's assistant. Boring as hell. At least this is fun to a degree, browser games, right? And later, they also converted these games to mobile. They made mobile versions with this too. So I worked for them. I thought like, well, it's still fun. Cool people here, games industry, love that stuff. Very international. That was in Hamburg in Germany. Which ones are more successful? That is my question for you. Let's take Metal Gear Solid versus Goodgame Empire. Which one is more successful in terms of, let's say, revenue? Metal Gear, absolutely right. I mean, man, did you play Metal Gear? It's incredible. Hideo Kojima, come on. Of course, Metal Gear is more successful, or is it? You would be surprised. Excuse me? Revenue. All-time revenue. All-time revenue. Up to this day, Metal Gear Solid made around, oh, I actually don't, I forgot actually, but something about $500 million, you know, with everything after that. Not talking about the other games, I'm talking about Metal Gear Solid 1. Maybe I should have been a little bit more precise there. About $500 million. I think Final Fantasy VII, the original game, not the remake, that's another game eventually, made also, what is that, 2 billion or something like that in total. I might be wrong. It's also really difficult to do the research on that because it's really tough to get that data, but something in that range. Empire for Kingdom, per day, around $300,000 in revenue when it was only on browser. When it came to mobile, even more. Big Farm also added a whole chunk per day, like $50,000 per day in revenue. Every day, 5 years long, $300,000. Now it's more than 10 years. They're still making that game. They're still thriving, right? They were able to hire 1,400 people at some point, only thanks to these two games, plus a few other games they had, but these were the main drivers. When I joined the company, I thought like, yeah, nice, I'm working for the games industry now, not the kind of cool, awesome, successful games I know about, but it's games. And then I was shocked. Equally successful. How is that possible? How can this type of browser game be making so much money like Metal Gear Solid, like Solid Snake? How is that possible? Monetization is part of the business model, right? On the business side. When you make a game, you don't necessarily have to think of a business model. Humans made games before there were business models, right? So a game and a business model is not always the same thing. But since there are business models, we have to design games in a way that they make money, right? Because, well, capitalism eventually. The system makes us design our games in certain ways so that they can be profitable, and therefore the designs of these games are very different, and the business models are different. Your job now, you are games researchers. That was my first job in the games industry. And your mission, find out what makes a successful game in terms of revenue and profit, right? You know, you could also make a game that is just a piece of art and it's very beautiful, it has an important story, but it's not financially successful. You could consider it as successful as well if this is what your goal is. Today, we're talking about profitability. Everything you learn today is mainly about how to make a game that makes money. You are games researchers now. What do you do now? You have that mission to understand why a game like Goodgame Empire is more successful or equally successful like a game like Metal Gear Solid. What is your first tool you're using as a games researcher? What do you do? What kind of tool would you use? Right. So a whole bunch of data, potentially. Where do we get the data from? We could get it from the market. We could get it internally because we already have running games. External market data, maybe look at other games out there. Look at our own games. What are our own games good at, right? Look at this data. Because we have millions of users, we can use that data, right? But what else would you look at? Now you have the data. You see this feature performs very well. So conclusion would be this particular feature in your game mechanic, that makes success. True or not true? Is it that feature that makes success? So we put that feature in every other game and it will always be successful. In every genre, every business model. Is that true? Let's say we want to send a rocket to the moon. We have a lot of data and now we can test. But that's really, really expensive to keep testing and have a lot of exploding rockets. I mean, we do that to a big degree. Elon Musk is doing that a lot, but he also got a lot of money. What else can we do that is cheaper than testing? Simulating based on what? On data? What do we at universities usually? What do the students do most of the time? Do they have a lot of data? Do they test a lot? What do you tell your students to do to understand a topic? I had to write a lot of papers in school. I had to write a thesis eventually, the bachelor thesis, master thesis, and so on, right? What do? Research. We understand things, we look at different things, examples, we have questionnaires, we look at literature and stuff, right? To make assumptions. So we have data, it's one tool. We have research, games research, looking at game examples, trying to understand how their systems work, their data and everything, their monetization systems and so on. I will tell you what we did. So that was us, and actually one other person here on the picture. Korean, Taiwanese, from Taiwan, from Beijing. He speaks fluently Japanese, and that guy is just German. And me too, just German. So we had different people from different countries to understand different games in different countries, markets, cultures, how they are successful, how we can learn from these games that are not even accessible to the European market. Nobody knows them in Europe. We even did this kind of research. Because there was a lot of games in China, for example, they made many, many millions with their methodologies. We wanted to learn from that. But in order to learn from that, without just copying their features, putting them into our games, like gacha mechanics, 12 years ago, gacha mechanics in the West they didn't exist over there. Everyone thought that's not going to work. But we adapted, after many years, we adapted and learned how to use these mechanics, make them look a little different so Westerners understand them too, but then they worked again. But we can't just copy the feature into any kind of genre. But the system, the psychology behind gacha mechanics work the same. That was our job to understand that. Games research team, later also product strategy team of 2014 of Goodgame Studios. Our tools were games research. We talked about it already. When I say games research, I mainly mean playing games for many, many hours, maybe days, weeks, months, writing about them, every detail we notice, every single step. Taking screenshots, taking videos, understanding that stuff. Sometimes I worked on a research for only one game for 2 months or longer. Studio analysis. So the studios that worked on these games, we even looked at these. Who's working, what kind of teams do they have, what kind of setups do they have, how much budget they had. Data analysis, internal and external, our own games. Market analysis, UI, UX research, and who knows what FTUE means? First time user experience. At that time, this term didn't really exist yet, so we just called it first session. We actually had a whole dedicated team of 5 people who were focusing all day long on improving the first sessions of our games. Every single step. Internal and external questionnaires. Questionnaires external is pretty clear, asking the players. Not a lot of value in many cases, less value than people might think, because it's expensive to ask people. You might ask the wrong questions, and players are not really good at expressing what they really feel or what they really think or do, what their true motivations are. If you blindly follow what your users say, it won't lead you anywhere. Still helpful, but you have to be really careful with external questionnaires. Internal questionnaires, because we had 1,400 experts at that company. At some point, we just hired people from all over the world, experts who worked on Diablo, on the original Diablo games, at EA, at Ubisoft, and so on, because we had all that money, and we also wanted to create one of the first AAA free-to-play games at that time. It was a failure. We learned a lot from this $40 million failure. We had all these people available. I think about 100 game designers or something, and we had workshops with them, always discussed these topics. Our games research team, every 2 weeks we got together with them, had workshops with them about topics like features like the autoplay feature, which we have learned from Asia at that time, which we thought is really weird to have autoplay functions in our games. Why would you play games like that, right? So this is how our games research documents look like. As you can see here, this says 59 pages. Data stuff, lots of screenshots, explanations, lists on all the items you can purchase in the game with the price ranges. That's how we took the games apart at that time. Typical questions we answered, we went all the way, understanding the very basics that nobody asked because everyone thinks it's clear. But what is fun? Every studio says they want to make fun games. But what is fun even? What does it even mean? That's not a strategy. That is not something you can really perform on. For everyone understands something different under fun. We answered these kind of questions with psychology. Do games need to be fun to be profitable? Short answer. What do you think? Do games need to be fun to be profitable? Do you have a game example? Gacha games. Casino games. Casino games focus a lot on extrinsic motivators, extrinsic incentives, money, obviously. I get to that later, but yeah, that is not fun, actually. It's motivation, but it's not fun. Horror games. Ha ha. I love that. I love that. I have a whole YouTube video, 30 minutes. You can listen to me talking about horror games and the psychology of horror games, because that was the thing. I had a lot of talks in the past about fun. What is fun and engagement? I did the research on it. And now we have the answer on that. And that YouTube video, look it up on my channel. It explains to you why horror games are eventually fun. I will not give you the explanation now. You have to check it later because it's complicated. But it's really interesting, and it helps you making better horror games. And it even makes you learn something about happiness in life. What are genres even? What is a puzzle game? Name a puzzle game, one of you.
It Takes Two, sir.
It Takes Two has a lot of puzzles in it, right? Any other puzzle game?
I played Unpacking.
Unpacking. How about Portal? Puzzle game. Tetris. Clearly the same thing. Tetris, Portal, same game, right? No, but both puzzle game. Using genres as a professional to communicate with your team what you want to make is a horrible decision. Roughly, you can say it, you can kind of use that term, so you somewhat get into the right direction, puzzle game. But understanding the actual psychological factors of a puzzle game and then explain with what kind of features you want to trigger these factors, that is much more precise. That is design strategy. The games industry is not professional enough yet. We keep fighting about what a genre is. I keep hearing that. Teams are discussing, yeah, but this is not really action RPG. This is rather like an arena something, blah. And then you have 3 hours of discussion, people start hating each other. If you want to have a proper design strategy, ignore genres. This is good to communicate in marketing with players, but not in professional teams eventually. What features work where, and what kind of games, and what kind of genres? What is the best graphic style? These kind of questions. What is quality? How much do we need? What is quality even? How much quality, how much production value do we need? It's not easy questions to answer eventually, but we got like all the way down to you, all the way to the bottom to answer these questions, right? How to improve retention and monetization, obviously very important. What is a perfect tutorial? Intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation, which one is better? We get to that in a little bit. And these are the questions we worked on. And everything that follows now is based on this kind of research. These things we did, right? These questions and other questions, many more questions. These are just examples. This is how deep we went. And this is also the knowledge now I support studios with and universities as well. We narrowed that down. I got 4 pillars here. 4 pillars of what? The 4 pillars of a successful game. What could these be? Name one pillar. What do you think? Accessibility, yeah? Okay, you have a very accessible game. I would argue like these browser games are very accessible. But what might be missing for you to play these?
Like a challenge when it comes to games.
Incentive. What is an incentive? Challenge. You mentioned challenge, incentive. Why do you play games? Because they are accessible?
Rewarding.
Rewarding?
The motivation.
Motivation, you have time. You know, I have heard like some people rarely also have fun with games when the gameplay is fun. So I would argue one of the most important things is that the gameplay is fun. So one success pillar maybe it could be fun. You mentioned accessibility. User acquisition, why? Because without users, you will not be successful, obviously. A very clear success pillar. Accessibility, you mentioned that. It needs to be easy to be picked up, no matter how much fun it is, no matter how engaging it looks. If you have to purchase like a $5,000 computer PC for that, and have to learn super complicated controls, have like an 8-hour character customization menu like Baldur's Gate, oh my God. I mean, maybe, yeah, when I was 14, I had the time for that. But these days, that feels like work. That's not accessible. It's still a very successful game, obviously, but for other reasons, maybe. Monetization, because if you don't have a plan to make money with it, if you just give it out for free and make zero money with it, then you won't be successful, most likely. And engagement or fun. These are the main factors. User acquisition, accessibility, monetization, engagement. After all our research, these are the main categories. If you master these categories for your particular business model, they look a bit different depending on the business model, but it's always these 4 pillars that make a successful game. And you have to be good enough, at least, in all 4 of them. If only one is missing, you have a super engaging game, super accessible, you have many, many users, but no monetization, zero money. You have a game that you can pick up super easily, super accessible, a great monetization system, but nobody wants to play it because it's just not fun, not engaging, zero money. You have accessibility, monetization, engagement, but no users, zero money. But if you're good at all 4 of these, you got money. User acquisition. What user acquisition methods do you know? How do you acquire users? Paid ads, performance marketing. These are the main, I'm not necessarily a marketer, but these are the main ways of user acquisition. Brand marketing, performance marketing. What is the difference? You say hyper-casual games, for example, focus on performance marketing, meaning they look strictly at very specific KPIs. CPI, KPIs means key performance indicators. CPI, cost per install, versus LTV, lifetime value of a user. How much money do I make for a user, and how much does it cost me to get a user in? And performance marketing has that focus all the time. How much money can I spend? How much money can I make with a user? And this is how easy that whole thing is of performance marketing. Very, very focused, very specific. No, they don't care how that works. Brand marketing, on the other hand, hypes players up with trailers, with promises that maybe are not even true, sometimes with lies. We have a lot of companies struggling with that. They promise so much. No Man's Sky, Cyberpunk in the beginning, both of them were able to redeem themselves, luckily. But in the beginning, so many promises, and these companies were not able to keep it. So brand marketing, if you don't do it right, can be a big issue because you have to build the brand first to get people over that big price point often. Brand marketing works really well for premium because the price point, premium price point, is a big obstacle, right? To get them there, you need to build the brand first. Without the brand, you can't get them over. If you are, on the other hand, it's the most traditional model. If you are, on the other hand, a no-name studio, no one cares about you, and that is a good thing. Works well for hyper-casual, for a lot of mobile games, obviously. Almost all mobile free-to-play games. Some of them also add branding to it to make the performance marketing even cheaper later. The good games I showed you before never really got to that point because they didn't need to. Performance marketing was fine. They don't care about who knows them. They still have millions and millions of users that pay a lot of money. User acquisition, depending on the business model, choose the right one, right approach. One of my approaches now these days for AAA games. I think they should focus more on performance marketing. We have the big issue in AAA that we are too traditional, always focusing on branding, having these big promises like Concord, for example, big promises to get them over the $40 price point to eventually give them basically only something like a free-to-play game. It's not free-to-play because you have to pay, but like a free-to-play game, minimum viable product. That's what Concord was. On a very high quality level with all the great animation and graphics, the gameplay was good too, but everyone still criticized it because it couldn't keep up with the expectations created through brand marketing. Let's say Concord instead would have done performance marketing. They do that all in secret, not spending, I don't know how many millions on that initial trailer. Just do it in secret. Release it as early as possible. High quality free-to-play game that is already a little bit of fun. Nobody would have complained about it. Everyone would have said, hey, for a free-to-play game that looks really decent, really nice. Not fully fleshed out yet, but it's nice. People wouldn't complain. They could have built it bigger and bigger from that point on with the first users and then monetize later. Had chosen the proper business model upfront, stick to it, create the design and the marketing around it, maybe they would have saved $200 million. And maybe all these people still had their jobs as well. There's two other things I want to mention here. Organics. What is organics? Organics is when you get people in for free. There are methodologies to get there. I love to talk about viral game design. Everyone talks about viral marketing. I talk about viral game design. Viral game design means you prepare already in the design things that people want to share later. People want to show off. People want to share odd, weird things, oddity, like glitches, like strange things that happen in the game, something they saw, which doesn't happen to everyone apparently, but maybe some kind of secret they saw in a game. And people want to share important information. You don't need to type that down. You just need to follow me on YouTube because I have a video short for this. And you will be able to create game design that with a lot of viral potential to potentially gather organics, users for free. And influencer marketing is also a big thing. The reason why I put them here is because they kind of work with both brand marketing, performance marketing, or kind of a side thing. But influencer marketing obviously is also a big deal these days. User acquisition, we understood what's necessary. All these points we had here, we just have to understand what kind of business model we want to have and what we want to apply. And then we can determine if this can be successful or not. Example, Concord. If they told me we have this game concept, this is the type of product we want to make, what business model should we choose? I would have said, maybe you want to try performance marketing. I know it's not the most typical thing for a company like Sony and classic games like that, but maybe you want to try it. You don't have much to lose if you are not kicking out huge promising trailers first or something. This is how you determine how a game can be successful in terms of user acquisition. Why do you play games? One of the questions we ask ourselves as games researchers. To answer that question, you need to understand why do people play in the first place. As soon as we are born, maybe, we play around with our hands, with our body, try to understand what's going on. We play very early to learn, to develop our brain. Playing is something really important, even in our ages now. When we are older, playing is important. Playing means we learn. Our brain rewards us for playing around with stuff. So now we understand why we play, because our brain develops. What are games though? Games are play, like playing in a sandbox, with rules. Now we just don't want to play around with the sand. Now we actually want to build a sand sculpture. That is a rule. What kind of sculpture do we want to build? That is our target, our goal. When we achieve that target, we feel good. It's an achievement. If we can't make it, maybe we feel frustrated. But this is also giving us extra challenges to train our brains to have fun with it. Fun is, this is neuroscience now. We do not go into neuroscience today. But fun is basically the reward for doing something that the brain needs and wants, development. That's why we play games. And we have games in our modern society because, well, where we are coming from, depending on what you believe maybe, but I would argue where we are coming from, when we were still hunting and so on, we had that gratification on an everyday basis. We were hunting the bunny. That was a lot of thinking, planning, action and stuff going on. And then we have it, gratification. Now in our lives these days, our brains are still working that way, but we don't hunt bunnies anymore. We don't have that gratification anymore. We gotta make it artificially now. And this is why we are now staring at screens and hunt bunnies on screens, for example. That gives us still the same gratification. That is engagement. But what exactly is engagement now in detail, or what is fun? Engagement and fun is the same. Fun is basically engagement, or also immersion. People also say passion to it. That is all fun and engagement from a psychological viewpoint. The reason why players keep playing, it's a powerful retention driver. It's the main reason for positive reviews, Metacritics, the foundation of powerful monetization as well. So we want to have that. Self-determination theory is the answer on what is fun. Autonomy, relatedness, competence are the three factors that you actually have to remember now if you want to make a fun game. Autonomy is all of us want to make important decisions that are impactful for our lives. And we have to have the feeling that these decisions are our own. In games as well, in real life, on the job, in education, everywhere. If your students don't feel like it makes sense to learn these things, if it's not their own decision that they want to do that, if they don't have the freedom to also decide what they want to learn, for example, maybe they will do it for the grades, but they will hate it. If you give them enough autonomy in the gamers, your employees, your students, they will like it a little more. Relatedness. All of us want to care for each other. We want to care for each other. We want to cooperate. It's something really important. Without other humans, when we are lonely, we easily get depression, for example. Very short experiment. You two look at each other. Do you know each other? You two do you know each other? Look at each other. In the eyes. For 5 seconds. Now, 5, 4, 3, 2. Stuff is happening just by looking other people in the eyes. Our brain is reacting so much. We are not aware how much of a motivational driver this is. And we can form that into fun or engagement in our games and control our players accordingly. Sorry for that awkward situation. Competence. Learning. That is the learning thing I talked about before. We always want to learn. We want to master this situation. We see a problem in front of us. We try to find an explanation. We try to find a solution for the problem for as long as we are capable to solve it. It can be challenging. If it's too challenging, we are frustrated. If it's too easy, we are bored. Something we found is you can't really isolate these factors. They are always overlapping a little bit with every game feature you create. In the center, you have very high player engagement. Now that was all intrinsic motivation. Fun. Engagement is intrinsic motivation coming from ourselves. There is something like extrinsic motivation too, which is rewards, money, grades in school. They are also motivators. What is that in games, for example? Login bonus, daily login bonus. Maybe you have heard that before, or maybe you experienced yourself. I actually don't really play the game anymore. I only come back to pick up my daily login bonus. This is when extrinsic motivation undermined intrinsic motivation. And that happens a lot in games. It's a big issue in games. We still need to understand. Keep rewarding players, they will lose the fun. They will lose their engagement for the game. The KPIs look good at first. The stickiness looks good at first because they do keep coming back on an everyday basis, but not anymore to play the game, but rather only to get the rewards. They don't engage much with the rest of the game. But the product managers still get their bonus because they were able to increase the KPIs. It's a big trap in the games industry. And almost nobody realizes that. These kind of login bonuses destroy the intrinsic motivation, the fun. These are the things, this is called the over-justification effect, by the way. Few people know about it. Also, when you get money for something you love, you might not love it anymore after some time because you focus too much on the money. Not necessarily a good thing if you want to keep people motivated for a long time and actually have them feel fun. In gamification, I'm an advocate for focusing also on these three factors. This is so important, but almost nobody gets it. Even the big, famous gamification companies out there, very few of them focus on intrinsic motivation. They only focus on the extrinsic incentives. It's a big issue. Every feature on these three factors, A, R, and C, autonomy, relatedness, competence, when I see that in a game, I analyze a game and the game's potential. I will look for this. If I see the focus is mainly extrinsic rewards, potential goes down. This is a big important point, and it's really difficult to see if you're not an expert in this.
But you need to understand these factors if you want to be very effective with your user engagement and gameplay fun. We analyzed the market by that, by the way, after this model at Fundamental. We checked top 100 games in profit of all time. They are almost all great at mixing these factors together very, very well. World of Warcraft, for example. Relatedness, you have alliances, people play together. Autonomy, you have to make a lot of important decisions in the game. Even starting with creating your character will have a lot of impact on your entire journey. Competence, you have so much progression, learning, highly, highly engaging. You don't need to create such a huge game in order to satisfy all three factors. It also works in smaller versions.
The proof that we actually checked it on the data level and success level, we really had a look at all the successful games out there, the top games of all time, how they made it, how they mixed together these factors, and how it turned out to be a success on the data side as well because of these factors. Competence and flow is basically the same. From two different people, a lot of people will tell you flow is the main thing you need to focus on. If you know the self-determination theory, you know it's only one factor. It's only competence. If you only focus on flow, you will miss out on relatedness and autonomy. Flow is not everything. Flow is important, but only maybe a third of the whole story. Monetization is the action or process of earning revenue from an asset or business. Common methods in the games industry. This is not complete, but we have initial game purchases, which is premium games, subscriptions, subscription models, DLCs and episodes, for example, in-game monetization, in-game purchases, in-game ads, and there's even more ways. We could even go look into interstitial ads. We could look into rewarded ads. There's so many things. I don't look at all of these things. I worked on all of these things. That's why I consider myself a monetization expert as well. NFT and token sales, Web3 is also a thing. Premium game pricing analysis. When you determine what kind of price your game should have, you should have benchmarks. Game benchmarks that are similar to what you are having in a similar time. They shouldn't be too old or anything. And then we look at the price points of games that are kind of similar. We look at a realistic range of games. So we are probably with this 2D platformer, we were probably around in this range here. And that gives us these price ranges as an example. Very, very briefly, how so you at least see it one time, how you do a pricing analysis. In my course, I explain this much more in detail. So these are the kind of things, if you want to monetize a premium game, you have to consider. If you have subscriptions, you might think that's a little bit outdated. There's mainly two types. In the West, Amazon is super big because the e-commerce thing, they have a subscription, they solve a problem. The problem is, I purchase it now, but I have to pay for the parcel to be delivered to me, and I have to wait a couple of days. With a subscription, you don't have to wait anymore. The timer, you skip the timer. It solves a problem. You get it the next day, or maybe sometimes even the same day. Yeah, depending on what city you're living in. Netflix, on the other type, you pay or you don't even have access. In gaming, Netflix model is actually outdated. That is the traditional Warcraft model. Final Fantasy is still using it, I think, the online Final Fantasy game. But other than this, focus on the Amazon type. I will not go through this. This is just one example of how deep our research goes. We looked at different features, compared them. These are all the points, what makes a great subscription model within your game, free-to-play game maybe, hyper-casual game or whatever, and what makes a bad subscription model. You get that on my content on YouTube or in my online course. A lot of hyper-casual games have subscriptions in them, pay like $5 per week. People are doing that in a hyper-casual game. It works. If you know how to do it, that works. Surface area monetization, in-game monetization needs surface area. What does that mean? Like a sponge. A sponge has surface area. The holes and everything, right? What does it do? It keeps water inside. It's docking stations for the water. This is how a sponge works. Your game is a money sponge. Create the surface area. When you decide you want to have in-game monetization, you need a lot of different docking stations for it. This is how I determine if a game has powerful in-game monetization or not. Here's one example. Equipment. Let's say you buy a sword in a game, but it's $5. You think like $5 for a sword? No, I'm not going to buy that. Well, maybe, however, if you can't buy it directly, but you can craft it. And the crafting has a crafting timer. Doesn't cost much, maybe like 20 cents or $0.00 now to skip that crafting timer. You might be willing to do that to get it faster. Maybe you need to get materials for that. And these materials you can get through special missions or tasks, but you have to prepare for these tasks and stuff. And paying a little bit maybe makes these tasks easier or give you higher chances for getting the materials you need. Add this to the battle pass. So in the battle pass, doing the missions and tasks, you move forward in the battle pass, and that gives you the materials you need. Maybe the battle pass has a VIP subscription, adds a VIP layer to it, so you pay for that as well to get more of these materials. Then we have loot boxes as well, and maybe sometimes you have materials in that too, the ones you need. And you can monetize everywhere. 20 cents there, $1 here, here also a little bit, there a little bit. Eventually, people maybe even pay more than $5, but it feels less than $5. This is how surface area, monetization surface area, increases the monetization potential. If you want to be like really strong with your monetization potential, you do it this way. You have the crafting lane, you can also enchant the equipment, you put sockets into the equipment so you can put gems inside and everything. You can monetize on the gems. And then also to make it look fancier, you can also like spend some money here. That is all monetization surface area. And then also you don't only have the equipment for your character, you also have a horse armor for your mount. But don't sell it directly. That was a big mistake Elden Ring did at that time. They sold it for $6 or something, I don't remember. The infamous horse armor at that time. Everyone hated that. That was, I think, Oblivion. Elder Scrolls. What did I say? Did I say Elden Ring? I meant Elder Scrolls. Oblivion had that. Yeah. Had that horse armor for $6 or something. If they went that like a little bit more spread way, difficult at that time because we didn't have the monetization systems in place for that, the technical side. But if they spread it more like this, people wouldn't have complained so much. That's at least what we see in other games. Maybe you also have a pet, and that pet also has equipment. Maybe your character has a demon form, and that demon form has special equipment, which you also can monetize like that. It's the same system, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. Not even a lot of work, except for the visuals and stuff. But the system is the same. That is a sponge, a money sponge. When I see a game having something like this, I know this is powerful monetization. And then I will not go through it in detail, but I will also look at the psychology of the shop systems. This is like not a lot of power. You don't even know what that means. 80,000 gold for $99.99 sounds expensive. What can I even do with it? Now I just show you this one next to it. That one suddenly looks valuable. You still don't know what gold is, but maybe if you're honest with yourselves, this already looks valuable because right next to that one, you have an anchor now, anchoring in psychology, anchoring buyers. This looks valuable to you suddenly. Also, it says only $99.99 instead of almost $200. Buy now. We have so many psychology things going on. You have a nice bundle here, timer for urgency. You don't have a lot of time left. We have a call for action. It's buy now. We have fancy visuals. Well, not super fancy. I'm not an artist, but you get the point. It's yellow. And anchoring ×2. The anchoring is, we see it right next to a boring package. And the other anchoring is happening here instead of $200. It's only like $90. When I look at these things, when someone pitches the game to me, I look at these things. Are you able to do these? Do you have this knowledge? If not, I already know this is not going to make a lot of money per user. You will not be able to have a successful game like this. You need to learn this rocket science in order to make a successful free-to-play or service game. Doesn't matter if it's a premium service game or free-to-play game. It's the same logic. And service games, let me tell you that, in most cases are basically only free-to-play games with a price tag upfront. I have a lot more stuff, a lot of more monetization methods, which I talk through for free on the YouTube channel on my course in very good detail for everyone to understand. In this case, Battle Pass design. What is powerful Battle Pass design? There are different types of Battle Passes. It's not just like Battle Pass is Battle Pass. It's very, very different. And I also have a cheat sheet part for this. I'm just showing off that we really thought about the terminology accessibility. There is a reason why we don't say usability. Usability has a limit. It's just about how to use a game or platform. Accessibility is even further than this. And I'm not talking about a certain target group, people who are in some way handicapped. And it's not about that. I know this term is used for these people a lot. I think this is not a good thing. Accessibility is important for everyone. It's important for you, for me, if you have children, if you own a company, and you have pets as well. When do you get to play games? You won't play on your PC much anymore. It's too complex. But maybe you will pick up your Switch, or at least you play Candy Crush Saga. That is okay. That is accessibility. Even though you're a hardcore gamer, but you don't have the time for that anymore. It's not. You need something accessible to play. So we looked at the terminology and we defined it properly. I never see anyone doing that in the games industry. We tried doing that. Accessibility is the quality of being easy to understand or enjoy. But what does easy mean? We even go deeper. Easy means needing little effort. So we get to the conclusion, accessibility is the quality of being understandable or enjoyable without a lot of effort. And that is a really, really important success factor. You mentioned it in the beginning, that a lot of games out there don't understand. AAA developers don't understand this. The lower the effort required to enjoy the game, the higher its accessibility. High accessibility does not mean that the game cannot be difficult. Don't dumb down your game. It just means you make your Dark Souls game more accessible to other people. Put it on, instead of only PlayStation, put it also on Switch. Now it's more accessible to people because people can take the Switch to work and play in the break, for example. That already makes it more accessible, but that doesn't mean that Dark Souls is less Dark Souls. High accessibility also means that the game can be enjoyed by many people. You want a lot of people in your game. When you think accessibility, think of pricing. $0, free to play. Accessibility is the main reason why free to play became such a big thing, and it's also the proof how important accessibility is. Tech requirements, data size, solo versus multiplayer. What is more accessible, solo player or multiplayer? Solo player, I would say, because you don't need to ask your friends to play with you. You don't need online connection or anything. However, it's in opposition to engagement, and from engagement we know relatedness is important too. But you have to decide. This is why solo player games still work, because they are more accessible than multiplayer games. But multiplayer games usually are more engaging. Even when you say you prefer solo player games, I tell you what, you don't. You would play multiplayer games much, much longer, proven by data, but they are just not accessible enough for you, so you stick to the other game. When you build a fake multiplayer in your hyper-casual game, for example, also in other type of games, Fortnite did that. You have the engagement potential there because people think they are interacting with other people. That's enough. They don't actually need to interact with other people for as long as they think they interact with others. And at the same time, you have the accessibility. That's actually a genius thing. You have to be careful with that. Online versus offline, obviously, if you can play offline, or some parts of the games at least offline, it's an advantage for accessibility. Cross-platform playability, user interface, obviously, localization, art design. When people in China make a game for Chinese audience, release it in Europe, people in Europe don't have an idea of the Three Kingdoms saga, or Wukong, for example, now. Now they know it, since there's the big title. Before that, nobody really knew about that. They just get to know it. But like 10 years ago, they thought, like, what is that monkey thing doing there, right? They don't understand the story. So that is, so art design and also setting and theme is a big part of the accessibility for your audience. This is also why Candy Crush Saga is okay for everyone on this planet, because nobody is a big fan of candy, or maybe we are fans of candy, but definitely nobody really minds candy, and it's really, really easy to understand what candy is. Accessibility opens you the door that leads to engagement and user acquisition and monetization. Accessibility is your key to that door. No matter how good your monetization, engagement, and user acquisition is, if it's not accessible enough, people will not play it. Fortnite versus PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, PUBG. PUBG was a hero when it released. It was one of the biggest, or the biggest game at that time. Everyone talked about PUBG. Then Fortnite came up. Basically same type of gameplay. But Fortnite won the battle. Why is that? Accessibility. To me personally, this art style is more engaging, but this is easier to understand for everyone. My mom would probably be more okay with this in comparison to this. My son, if I had one, I don't have one, would probably be more okay with this rather than with this. And I'm more okay with this, but I'm also okay with that. So it's like for a broader audience, and it is for free. PUBG was $40. Fortnite won this battle mainly because of accessibility. Fortnite did not have a great monetization system in the beginning. They did not make a lot of money per user in the beginning. It's better now. But in the beginning, monetization was not the thing. Engagement was similar to PlayerUnknown's Battleground. But accessibility, this is where they won. Big time.
The music is coming up, you're ready for your first battle. The scene is so cool, the camera is so cool, the graphics are cool, everything amazing. And music comes up, do, 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 and then text box. And I'm like, what the heck? Just let me fight. I will figure that out. And if not, you can still help me. You can still support me. Why can I not fight right now?
Text boxes in a tutorial. We have more accessible ways. Still, the games industry has a lot to learn if it comes to tutorials. Even AAA developers don't get tutorials right. Think accessible. Huge innovation potential lies here. Not necessarily on the engagement and feature side. Much more on the accessibility side. Create Dark Souls that is playable on my mobile device with one finger controls. Put that challenge on the table. You will become very creative. You will make a more accessible version of Dark Souls. That does not mean you should skip all the hardcore stuff. Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, or Breath of the Wild are almost something like that. These games can be as difficult as Dark Souls if you are up for the challenge, but they also leave you a lot of room to go slow, step by step, avoiding all the battles. I can enjoy it as a hardcore Dark Souls player, but also my friends who barely play any console games, they can enjoy Zelda as well by just walking around, roaming around, and step by step learning at some point also how the combat works. It's crazy how much Zelda achieved through accessibility, having even a really difficult game which everyone can actually learn with some time. We are done with all these things. If you have 2 more minutes, you can think about it now. Why are these games equally successful to these games? We can explain that now. Go through all these points. What do these games do in user acquisition? Performance marketing. You have to understand your business model first. I know now someone pitches to me, we are making a free-to-play game. Then I will ask, okay, what's your marketing approach? Oh, we want to build a big brand around it. I say no. No success. Instead, they say, our performance marketing, we will scale slowly, have the MVP approach. I will say, okay, that's an option. Next thing, how do you engage your users? What kind of methods do you use? Over here and over here, very same, the features look different. But here, Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy have an engaging storyline, which is, by the way, also relatedness. Not other people, but it's artificial people. And you relate to these characters. You start liking these. They become your friends and everything. Metal Gear Solid story-based. Mass Effect story-based. You really start liking these characters. That is also relatedness. In these games, relatedness is the alliances and communities you're having. Huge driver here. Works here, works there. Both successful there. For example, only one of the 3 factors mentioned. The other 3 factors, I would also go through them to verify if they can be successful with the engagement. Monetization. For their model, short game, short type of game, very engaging in a short time. We can create that engagement with brand marketing. We can monetize it with a high price upfront. These games, nobody will care for these games. But we can get people in slowly, step by step, and just make sure per user we make just enough money to pay for the next user, to get the next user in. If that monetization system is giving for that, also with a sponge, the money sponge and stuff, if the people working on this can do that and know this knowledge, this rocket science, then I would say yes, okay, they can be successful with that. Next thing, accessibility. Playable on mobile devices, everything fine. Free to play, seems fine. On that side, we already have people engaged a lot. This is targeting specifically people who are already used to these kind of games. It's accessible enough for those people. Also okay. Now with these factors, I can explain in every field, in every business model, if they can be successful or not. And I already talked about the example from Fortnite. Actually, my target was asking you the question, why did it fail? But I answered it already. Engagement was there. It was actually a good game. People who played it said it's solid, it's good, it's really not bad. There's some fun ideas in there, unique ideas. Monetization, price point up front, later monetization, not great, I think, but not big enough. Accessibility not given because of the high price point. User acquisition was also a problem because of that, right? So people are waiting outside, I think. This is why I hit you right away. This is my cheat sheet. And I'm really happy for feedback, and I know it was too much content today, actually. I hope you enjoyed it anyways.
It's